hitting. Okay, so we're live broadcasting from Park City, Utah, where I am, and Billy is in outside of Naples, Florida. So thank you for being with us today. So grateful for you all joining, and just a loud thank you to the Family Office Insights community for participating in our Zooms in this Zoom fatigued world. So we're super excited to have Billy here today. And I know that most of you have probably read and reviewed the information. So we'll get into the formal presentation in a moment. Meanwhile, we encourage, as always, questions, and we please ask them as you think of them and go along, and put them in the chat box in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that and asking the questions as we go along. And that we are recording this. So for the record, if you care to review it at another time, it'll be on the Family Office Insights YouTube channel. And also, if you discover after the presentation that you know of others that might be interested in hearing more about what we're the Econophy today, you can share that YouTube link with them. It's Family Office Insights YouTube channel. It's pretty easy to get to. And also, we're going to put you in direct contact with Billy, of course. So with that, Billy, take it away. Thank you for being with us today.
Arthur, thank you for the opportunity, and let me welcome all the family offices in attendance. It's my pleasure to have this opportunity to meet all of you today. The name is Damian Billy. That's quite all right, Arthur. Many people get it confused. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called the Econophy Group. We are an independent PE sponsor. By that, we do not follow the general standard industry 220 model. We look at an opportunity both on a direct investment basis and otherwise is specified by a client for a bespoke, if you will, criteria of an international domicile or other registration. So we look at opportunities from the standpoint of, one, do they have a high growth potential? Second, do they have a performance opportunity that is escalating? And we feel that in this particular biotech M&A situation, both are present along with other attributes to increase the performance over time. We're actually involved originally in the fintech area, and this biotech opportunity came to us through a gentleman that I know in Europe who says that he had a client that he was not able to help. And he says, can you? So not being familiar with the biotech area and specifically nuclear medicine and molecular imaging diagnostic technologies, it was a learning curve. But I became fascinated by the whole idea of what this technology can do for the medical industry in general and how it can be applicable around the globe. So we began to look into it, and as I had these discussions with the major shareholders, they asked, can you help? And I says, I'll need a week or two to look at the information and then make a decision as to what point of approach we'll take. In doing the due diligence and talking to other people, I was convinced that this was an enormous and extraordinary opportunity. So I went back to the major shareholders and I said, yes, we can participate, but only on the basis if we acquire a majority stake in the company. Now that took a minute of pause by them. I explained why and what our vision was, and they agreed to sign on board. So here we are today, moving through the process of this being overall a $60 million M&A for a biotech company that has developed a first-in-kind, safe, non-invasive, nuclear medicine, molecular imaging, diagnostic technology that is focused upon pulmonary diseases, i.e. hypertension, which there is no cure, and embolism that when undetected is fatal. And one of the unique attributes about this biotech M&A situation is that the technology itself was developed by the Montreal Heart Institute. If you're not familiar with the Montreal Heart Institute, it's one of the #1 research centers in North America. Plus the fact that it is the only non-US member of our own National Institutes of Health. So from a noteworthy, if you will, development provider, the MHI certainly is at the top of anyone's list when it comes to be a contributor. Part of the technology development, of course, was done with the idea that this would be an evolutionary application. And through the early stages of the development process, it became evident that the technology can go beyond and has the capacity and capability beyond hypertension and embolism and pulmonary diseases to be applicable to the liver, the kidneys, the gallbladder, and the bladder. And I won't go too far into the weeds, but with the adaptation of what they call a positron emission tomography, known as a PET camera setup, it can actually evolve into the application for detection and monitoring of other diseases involving the heart, COPD, diseases that primarily impact women, and others. So we're quite excited that this is not a one-time technology. The technology actually has an evolution process that extends itself for the next 5 to 10 years. The opportunity itself is unique from the standpoint that it is already patented in the US, in Canada, and in the EU. So that is our starting place with respect to developing the clinical 3 trials, which we are coming in at. That's our juncture for the M&A situation. The opportunity then evolves to take this, as we've discussed, with a strategic partner, which is in the documents that we have provided as background, as Clinical Americas. Clinical Americas is a 2020 industry award-winning clinical research organization whose parent company is based in Tokyo and listed on that exchange. And the reason I'm talking about the evolution so early in this presentation is that because we intend to extend, if you will, the patent coverage to the Far East, the Asia region, to Japan, South Korea, to Malaysia, to India, so that we eventually have a global expanse with respect to covering from America, going east and going west. Part of the uniqueness of the technology is that it has already been considered by an independent analysis to become the gold standard in the industry. Now that analysis was done by a company called Alacrita, A-L-A-C-R-I-T-A Consulting, and they're a consultancy for the life science, pharma, and biotech industry, and they're based in London. And their analysis showed that because of the ability to replace, if you want to use that word, the current industry standard. The current industry standard is known as a macro aggregated albumin, A-L-B-U-M-I-N. They're known as MAAs. Their diagnostic capability is limited to 50 microns. Our technology goes way beyond that, down to the embolism stage that the MAAs cannot detect. So we are very fortunate to have not only an opportunity for a leading edge technology to come into the medical industry, but also one that is disruptive and will put us in the lead with respect to our diagnostics when it comes to those particular organs and as we expand the capability. One of the analysis that was done by Alacrita was a measurement in the current patented countries. What is the market share? What is the potential? Their estimate was that there are 329 million individuals that could be considered the current markets. Of that, they projected that the opportunity at the outset, in the early stages, would garner somewhere between 25 to 35% of the entire market via a treatment, and that is considered an underestimate, that the opportunity could be as high as 50%. We prefer to be conservative in our estimates and our outlook as far as our projections and financial projections. So at this time, we've only used the US as the marketplace, and part of our deck presentation shows that as the, if you will, the sole focus at the outset. But even then, we'll be moving towards $90 million of top line revenue within 5 years. The opportunity that we have taken on has a very distinct, if you will, upside scenario to it. When we entered into the M&A process and decided on the terms and conditions, we did it based upon the Alacritza valuation. At that time, the valuation was 72 million. And I bring this out at the forefront because the marketplace has changed dramatically since that valuation was cited, but we are locked in at 72 million. Currently, in our discussions and due diligence with the private equity firms and others in the industry, particularly one MD who had a nuclear medicine company that did exit, my conversation with him was very, very insightful, because he says, you don't understand the full opportunity that you have before you. Right now, he says, that marketplace for phase 2 nuclear medicine and molecular imaging technology is greater than $100 million with a successful phase 2. Of course, we already have completed a successful phase 2 and of course a successful phase 1. So our juncture for the M&A is phase 3. So the upside for this particular opportunity is a discount of approximately 38% to where the market may be once we enter the phase 3, which would be in 6 to 9 months. The evolution of the technology is predicated on strategic partnerships that we are forming and have formed. Therefore, we have begun to create, if you will, early stage partnership interest in us that will allow us to segue when we are through with the phase 3 or culminating with the phase 3 and approving the FDA approval, that we already have people in place for distribution. And it's very important for me to note that at this time, the FDA process, as many of you well know, can be a very difficult and somewhat indeterminate procedure. One of the, again, going back to our due diligence, and one of the unique things that Montreal Heart Institute did was to create, if you will, a pre-application protocol. That protocol involves 2 elements. One element is called the categorization of the product or the diagnostic, and that in this particular case of MHI, they classified it as an urgent care treatment, which it is. The second component, which is a catalyst for approval, is the classification known as an orphan drug, and that's where the nuclear medicine comes in. So when you combine the two, the effect is that the FDA process is lessened by anywhere from 6 months to a year for approval. So that means that we will be in the place to be commercialized somewhere between 24 months and 30 months versus 36 months to 46 months. The opportunity, again, for the pulmonary diagnostic lends itself to a climate change, and I want to be careful here as I'm saying this, as a climate change element, because if there, as we have studied and spoken with other people about climate change and its effects on populations, we have learned that the air pollution particles currently in the US are estimated to affect 135 million people. This would be a patent that we would pursue in the future. We already have a gentleman from one of the most outstanding law firms in the country, Pulmonary, which has one of the largest life sciences departments, who's our patent attorney. And Pete Thurlow will be an individual who will be leading us in these efforts. We've discussed it and have discussed this with Clinical Americas, and they feel this is another opportunity for us to integrate another patent application along with expanding our marketplace as far as application by having a protocol designed and approved by the FDA specifically for climate change. And as you well know,
I didn't even know that. That's news to me. That's really, really interesting.
Well, this is something that came across, Arthur, when I was doing some research and we were looking at other things with respect to climate change, because I saw a report by the American Lung Association. It was published on April 21st, if anyone wants to look it up. But it talked about how much of an impact climate change is having on populations, respective of the impact for respiratory diseases. So that really caught my attention. And the more that we looked into it, the more we discovered how much, if you will, the importance will be in the future for the medical community, and particularly a technology company like our biotech, to have the capability and capacity to pursue that with respect to a diagnostic. And of course, that adds to the valuation momentum tremendously.
Yeah, very cool. And I apologize I got Billy flashing me in the face here, and I know you.
It's quite all right, but yeah. I hear it all three ways, so it's no problem.
Yeah, medical Dr. Billy, right?
There we go. There we go. Yeah. Actually, that's a very, very interesting side note, Arthur, because my mother, when she gave me the initials, that was her lifetime wish. So maybe my evolution of life has now brought me to this stage of being involved in biotech.
Yes, the universe delivered. Excellent.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One of the unique qualities of what we're doing in building the strategic relationships. For instance, this morning I had a call with a group in Belfast. They are very much into relationship building with respect to bringing American companies into the, if you will, the UK marketplace and the EU. We are also working concurrently with a group called OCO Global. They provide introductions for distribution around the world. So we have begun a very early stage, if you will, cultivation of strategic relationships that will actually turn into our distribution, global distribution network. One of the real sad parts about our due diligence was the discovery of what the ineffectiveness and the inefficiencies are in the US medical system. And as you saw that in the deck, there are 4 prominent inefficiencies and ineffective outcomes that are currently in place. And that is the number of deaths per year, which range from 400,000 to 800,000 per year. The number of, if you will, the cost to the overall GDP of the US economy, that is ranged from anywhere from 500 million up to 750 million. The fact is there is no cure for hypertension and embolism, and we will be the first diagnostic in the world to come to market for that purpose.
So is there a page here you want me to jump on?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm trying to going through as I've been used to doing these conversations, Arthur. So if you want to jump to I think it's the 3rd page, where it has the problems. There we are. Those are the problems that face the medical industry today. And as you can see, by the number of deaths, the cost to our economy, and the fact is that we would be a newly developed disruptive technology that would address this hypertension and embolism and pulmonary diseases in general, to be the first to come to markets. Next slide, please. So there you see that we have I'm looking at our countermeasures to them. Each one, can be read independently, but we feel that we have covered every aspect of this particular problem or problems as they are within the United States. We address them very well. We address them specifically, and we address them with a determinable outcome. And one of the issues that we have come to learn as we've been going through the process here is the fact that the outcome of the M&A actually produces an ESG, and it produces a impact investing theme. The ESG becomes transparent, it becomes transferable, and becomes quantifiable throughout the entire, if you will, patient ecosystem, starting with the insurer, starting with the health provider, including the patient care unit to the patient itself. And we've done that, in fact, by one, being able to lower the cost, which the current industry standard per treatment is between $500 to $550. We will be coming to market at $400 or a 25% discount. Now, just because we're coming to the market at a discount doesn't mean that we're giving up our bottom line. At the outset, our profit margins will begin at 32%. So it's a very healthy combination to be able to discount the treatment, and also the fact that the margins are very much, if you will, built in to escalate with economies of scale up to 41%. Another way that we provide a solution is the fact that if you would, next slide, please, Arthur. Is the fact that the normal, as the top line is highlighted there, the normal U.S. medical industry process takes about 2 years between the initial exam to where they go through a series of tests to determine what is the full extent of the pulmonary disease. In our situation in treatment, we cut that down from 2 years to giving, if you will, a final status in 2 months. Now that sounds dramatic, but the fact is our treatment process is very streamlined. It doesn't involve going through a number of challenging tests by the patient over a prolonged period of time. We are able to determine that within a 2-month period, and that's based upon a full diagnostic from our technology. So from an ESG standpoint, we certainly provide benefits through the entire ecosystem, including, most of all, the patient. Next slide, Arthur, please. And as you see here, the technology itself, and this was developed in phase 1 and phase 2, actually has a 5x efficacy versus the industry standard. As you see there that, yes, it has the industry standard, which is the MAA, macro aggregated albumin, which, by the way, is limited to 50 microns as far as their diagnostic depth. That's, of course, is a given with us. And then we have 5 other attributes that give us a leading edge and disruptive, if you will, technology presence in the marketplace. That will remain in place because as we evolve, our effectiveness with respect to treatment and diagnosis will increase, because we will migrate from what is known as and I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but it's called a single photon emission computed tomography. It's known as a SPEC. Our adaptation will migrate to what is known as a positron emission tomography, which is known as a PET. This will give us a greater depth and width of diagnostic capacity, and it also, a PET will be the leading edge as far as camera and imaging in the future. So we're doing an early adaptation and integrating it within our process. And as far as the treatment process, is very streamlined. The Pulmonary Diagnostic Kit consists of a blister pack, and also a buffer. Now, those two are mixed along with what is known as a TC-M99, which is provided by the medical facility or the hospital. That mixture is then injected into the patient, and then the camera application takes hold. It's as simple as that. The kit, although it has a nuclear medicine orientation, it is not, how can I say it? There are no nuclear or regulatory overhangs as far as oversight for our administration during the clinical trials, nor for commercialization. So we become, if you will, allowed to enter the marketplace without restrictions once the phase 3 trial is, excuse me, the phase 4 trial is completed.
So that's interesting. How did it bypass the chain of command regulatory requirement, whatever that is? Not the
it's because it's the way that the product is designed and the application is the composites of the application. It's classified, and I give credit to the Montreal Heart Institute for doing this. It's classified as a, let me get this, make sure I say this correctly, as a non-radiopathological diagnostic. And therefore, it's not subject to regulatory controls during the phase 3 trials, nor in commercialization. But it has the nuclear medicine, if you will, genre to it, as far as the application to the FDA. And of course, it becomes the basis for the technology to evolve and the diagnostic to evolve in the future. But that's been already proven, Arthur, that no, there is no hindrance nor limitations or challenges with respect to this nuclear medicine, molecular imaging, going through the entire process and then getting commercialized.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Next slide, please. These two illustrations, and you can look at them yourself, but we felt this was very important to produce for any investor considering in our participation. We wanted them to look at the actual global scale of who's being affected by what diseases. And as you can see here, of course, heart disease, coronary is the number one. But what we have learned in our due diligence is that over time, respiratory disease is currently number 3 in the world as far as a death, if you will, catalyst. We believe, and certain terminologists that we've spoken to believe, that eventually respiratory diseases will become the number 1 killer. And the reason being part of that is because of the climate change, if you will, epidemic. I'll use that word, epidemic, in the fact that there are no current controls with respect to air pollution, nor of the, if you will, the particles infiltrating into the various populations around the world. And next slide, please, Arthur. That just gives you an idea of where the deaths are on a daily basis in what countries. And as you see, we have targeted those who have the highest rates and those that have, if you will, rates, death rates that pertain to other diseases with respect to the kidneys, the gallbladder, the bladder, and the liver. So I point these things out is to give you a sense of the marketplace. And even though 329 million is a fairly large scale marketplace as determined by Alacrita, that was only based in the 3 patent countries. We intend to have over time at least coverage in 10 to 12 countries with respect to our patents of pulmonary disease and this evolutionary process.
And these deaths, Damian, are for all conditions in this graphic?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the next slide, if you will, please, Arthur. Oh, I'm sorry. The one before that, I didn't look all the way down. Shows how it breaks down per disease. And from our technology diagnostic focus, we go down at least to the 4th tier.
Yeah, very cool. I've seen this graphic before, even before I saw it with you when we first chatted. The visual capitalist folks have some really good stuff.
Yes,
Super
and
interesting.
quite honestly, we were very taken back by just, if you will, the amount of death and the widespread with respect to diseases and their impacts on populations. And yet we have some of the most advanced medical facilities in the US and elsewhere. So it just shows that, you know, we are actually operating at a deficit when it comes to cure.
No doubt. No doubt.
The next slide, please, Arthur. There we go. Okay. Could you just give me the headline? It's kind of blurry here from my end.
Phase 3 and 4 strategic partners engaged for FDA approval.
Yeah. These, as I mentioned before, include Linical Americas and its parent company, Linical, which is based in Tokyo and listed there. Part of our unique approach to the FDA is not only having the MHI directly involved, but also forming these other partnerships and relationships to give us an advantage going to the marketplace. Linical Americas is a very unique organization. Matter of fact, in one of my conversations with Dr. Tracy Goyken, that's Goeken, he made the comment to us, he says, you know, we see a lot of things coming to the marketplace or being approached for us. He says, as far as a therapeutic, diagnostic device. And he said, Michael, I can tell you this is too important not to go to market. So I felt very good about his, if you will, perspective of the critical nature of what we have to offer and what it means to populations in general as we become, if you will, more expansive around the globe in our treatment for the various diseases and organs that will be focused upon. Next slide, please, Arthur.
FDA approval pathway for success.
Yes. Again, too, I alluded to this earlier and described it as far as what the MHI has done as far as establishing the preset protocol for FDA submission. And again, their work is instrumental for investors benefiting at a very early on stage with respect to any type of diagnostic or therapeutic, which can take years, and sometimes it's a very elongated process that the FDA has not approved. Here we have the opportunity in that the MHI has already assessed. They believe the perspective is 99.1% we will be approved. And one of the—
Can't beat that.
Well, one of the— it was very encouraging. One of the other supporting elements that came about was my conversation with a medical doctor, and I mentioned this briefly, but his assessment was that the opportunity that you have right now without the first dollar coming in is not $72 million valuation, it's $100+ million valuation. So anyone coming on board has an upside automatically in a very short time of plus 38%. And we look for as we begin to evolve into the phase 3 and go into phase 4. Our next target level after that is 250 mil. And in general, in the industry, looking at diagnostics just on a very general basis, the valuation ranges from 400 million to 600 million. In our particular case, because of the value that we will be integrating into the system, we see this becoming somewhere between 750 million to $1 billion
Wow.
market cap.
Yeah. Wow.
And one of the, it's common sense, to emulate success. So if there is a success story already out there, it gives you kind of a guidance and a pathway to move forward. In our particular case, it involves a company that has developed a kidney treatment. It's called DaVita. DVA is the New York Stock Exchange symbol. They have developed a very sophisticated kidney analysis and tandem types of applications when it comes to kidney disease and treatment. Their market cap is in excess, what I saw the other day, is 12 billion, and they were trading at I believe, 112 plus. So it gives us a long, if you will, and very, very rewarding pathway going forward, because we can easily begin to emanate what they have done by creating centers around the US, in Canada, in the EU, in the UK, in the Far East, that actually would serve as multi-diagnostic centers. Now, I can't put a number on that, but I can only say by achieving that or moving towards that as part of it, as a company evolution, we could certainly surpass the 1 billion market cap. Next slide, please, Arthur.
Use of proceeds, milestone achievement based.
This is a very important slide for us and anyone that we talk to, because our M&A is based upon a milestone capital contribution. In other words, every dollar that we put into this M&A project goes towards an achievement of a milestone that takes us to a next, if you will, valuation step. We're looking at initially, the composite is 60, rounded out 60 million, and we broke it down into composites with respect to a very, very early stage by a family office or angel investors of 2 mil. Then we look for the acquisition cost of 11 mil. And that 11 mil actually creates our guarantee of ownership up to 61%. And by us contributing additional dollars when it comes to the manufacturing, which will actually be done in Switzerland through a free trade zone, and the other contributions that we will make with respect to going overseas and evolving that market, we actually grow our equity stake to 74%. So early investors will see a phenomenal rise over time, and that's the projection, of course. But from where we see us at the early stages at this time of a $72 million valuation, which in actuality in the marketplace environment is 100 plus, we see our the early stage capital being very, very amply rewarded many times over. And later stage capital will be rewarded likewise, but not as great as the early stage, which could be anywhere between 5 to 8 times original capital.
So, Damian, just to be clear, is the valuation that you've gotten locked in at 72 or whatever the number was, do you benefit from that for the 2 million, the 11 million, the 14 million, the 17, or just the 2?
No, we actually benefit, and that's a great question, Arthur. We benefit from that by doing the 2 and the 11 and having the resources to enter into the Linacal Americas phase 3 and phase 4 trials. So in total, 25. Yep. That locks us up into the 61% and guarantees us, if you will, a pathway to improve that and increase it to 74%.
And that is percentage ownership based on the valuation that will remain at 72 until the next round. And that'll, yes, whatever's gonna, the next round will dictate what the real valuation is.
Yes, and that real valuation, and I don't mean not to reiterate this so many times, but that valuation will be at 100 mil plus. The marketplace has already established that.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
And next slide, Arthur, please.
Yeah, 1 second. I gotta
Okay.
navigate here. Okay, we go.
So we're looking at actually what we were just talking about, Arthur, and how this is broken down in the early stage, where our eventuality takes us to, at 74%. And then we have some additional comments and insight that we wanted to share with the audience with respect to the other footnotes there.
Great.
Our team, which is of course critical to anyone's interest in what we are doing, comprises of myself, Mr. Raj Mahale, who is a 25-year veteran in the securities industry, who has done all types of M&A, every type of financial product that you can imagine. Very skilled in, matter of fact, the Indian market, where he has done a number of transactions. Likewise in Japan and in other overseas areas, Middle East and in the EU. We have recruited a gentleman, a pulmonologist who resides in Florida by the name of Danny Obeid. Danny Obeid is about 12, 13 years into his pulmonary practice, exceptional physician who's a pulmonary specialist. Matter of fact, he has participated already in 14 different trials from the top 10 different pharmas around the globe. He is actually just been nominated and recently accepted the position of being the head of pulmonary medicine for Advent Health in Florida. And he will be residing up in the Palm Coast area, where you were just having a good time, Arthur, recently on your trip.
Palm Coast was beautiful, yeah.
So we're very pleased to have Dr. Obeid coming on board. And of course, he brings along a lot of associates.
Now, we're just saying they have a massive campus up there. I remember seeing it, Advent. Yeah.
Oh, yes, very much so, very much so. Plus, he's affiliated, and just for his own credentials, he's affiliated with 2 other hospitals in that area. So for being a pulmonologist, he's very well known, very well respected, gets on the lecture circuit from time to time when he has time. But we're very pleased to have him on board. He's very excited about this technology, because when I introduced it to him, he says, that sounds, quite extraordinary. So I let him have some time to digest it. And he came back to me and he says, I want to be a part of this. So that gave us right then the idea that we were on track for something of value going forward. And as you see, the other gentlemen there are listed. One is the CEO of the Montreal Heart Institute, Vacar, what they call their LP unit, which is their incubation development lab. And then we have the gentleman who is the former CEO, Mr. Gary McGann, who will be joining us in the senior VP role and as an advisor and liaison back to the other shareholders. We have Robert joining us as part of our group in an advisory capacity. So we feel we have a very well-rounded team, plus the fact these individuals will be augmented, all our team will be augmented by the strategic relationships that we're currently building and developing to evolve the technology and also our global presence.
Great. So we have a bunch of questions. Allow me to take one of the questions, second one first. What specific pre-diagnostic event would trigger go or no go of Pulmobind scan versus existing alternative?
Again, please, Roger.
Okay, yeah, hold on 1 second. What specific pre-diagnostic event would trigger a go or no go of the Pulmobind scan versus the existing methodology?
Well, it's a great question. And there is no, how can I say it? There is no go, no go, if you will, scenario, because the patients will all be suspect to some form of pulmonary disease, hypertension, embolism, climate change, etc. So when the the clinicians and the medical care facilities who our distributions will be going through as far as our network, they will be determining the patient load. They will be determining the patient, if you will, profile of who is going to be treated in this manner with our diagnostic. So we don't make that determination. The actual medical facility, the hospital, whoever is, if you will, the treatment provider makes that determination for their patients.
Right. And I think what we're getting at here also, if you don't mind, Zeno, if I paraphrase, is that if this becomes the standard, then it won't be about using this or the incumbent. It would be just using this.
Well, in that, yes, and if I didn't interpret that correctly, then you aren't spot on as far as your interpretation. I mean, this is a disruptive technology, and we intend to lead with it around the globe. That sounds very dramatic, but it's an aspiration that we have. It's certainly a vision that we can see it becoming the number one. And some people have made a comment that, eventually this thing might become just as common as an X-ray.
And during the time where you mentioned that rather than 2 years, it can be done to 2 to 3 months, I think you said, how frequently does the test have to be conducted or scans done during that time?
Actually, it's a great question. And the process is, and I just cited this earlier today in one of my conversations. You would expect that there would be a composite of people involved in this process in going through this diagnostic. It's very streamlined. You have a nuclear medicine technician and you have a nuclear specialist. They administer the treatment. They prepare it for scanning and imaging. The process is done. The diagnosis is made. The patient is informed. And the treatment process is then, if you will, outlined for them. And that gives the patient, if you will, an assurance of exactly where they are in the process. Are they being treated at the very, very beginning? Are there already signs that they have to attend to and monitor? Or are they at the advanced stage? But one of the unique parts about this detection and monitoring by this particular diagnostic is it covers the entire waterfront from beginning to the end of treatment.
Super interesting. Great. Thank you for the questions. Shall I go to the next page?
You can. I don't believe there's anything of real value there unless I'm mistaken. Oh, well, that's a value to everyone. Yes, those are the numbers. I've forgotten about that. We talk about the medical applications all the time, but of course the numbers and the projections are just as critical. That's what we're looking at, and that was only based upon the U.S., if you will, presence. We really foresee this accelerating over time, especially as we get into the, if you will, the Asian markets and further develop the UK market. I can tell you that from this morning's conversation with the gentleman by call Yasin Nahin, Nahi. He's actually a part of Enterprise Florida International. He's based in London. And he's been working on our behalf in creating, if you will, introductory relationships. And one of those relationships that's, if you will, beginning early stage is with Cambridge University and their research center. So we would be looking to add, if you will, research complements as we move forward, such as Cambridge and others. One of the unique facets of what we're doing going forward early stage in phase 3 is we're involving Vanderbilt University's Center for Pulmonary Disease, which is the oldest in the US and certainly one of the most notable. They have in themselves developed a separate lung institute that's an offset to their vascular disease. So they're part of our clinical 3 process, along with McGill University in Montreal and the University of Toronto and their medical affiliation up there. And as far as the building out the clinical 3 trial network, Clinical Americas has already created, if you will, candidates to do that. And so we would look very, very speedily to implement the phase 3 based upon the first, if you will, $15 million in capital participation.
Wow. So a couple of questions, if it's okay.
Please.
The competitors, if any, is there anything that's, clipping at your heels here at all that causes you concern?
It does not cause us concern for this reason, Arthur. When Alacrita did their evaluation, both from a technology standpoint and from a market standpoint, they did their own, if you will, market competitive analysis, which they shared with us in their final report. In that, they cited, I think, 6 of the, if you will, what could be considered competitive scenarios, of which they concluded that all were lagging with respect to not only capacity and capability. So their determination was that this particular diagnostic that we're about to acquire will become the gold standard for the industry. And going back to your question about replacement and disruptive technology, that's inclusive of their summary.
And then when you acquire this, obviously you want to hold on to it as long as you can to keep up the valuation. And I know there's no way to predict an acquisition or an exit, but it's seemingly something that the big companies would want to scoop up at the lowest possible valuation.
Well, we're going to protect ourselves in this way that gives us somewhat of an advantage, and I don't know how much leverage we'll achieve from it. But as we've discussed with the UK people and with the Dublin people and with Lunical Americas and with Lunical in Japan, as we're moving through the phase 3 and phase 4 processes, we will begin to cultivate an opportunity for us to do an IPO. That IPO will either be done on Euronext or on the London Exchange. Now, I can tell you, and this is not letting the cat out the bag, but we've already been approached by the JP Morgan Life Sciences team, and they approached us back in March. So they're monitoring us because they said at that time, their minimum threshold was 75 million. We fall short of that. I tried to kind of segue into a higher number, but they said, no, we understand you're fixed at 60. So let's just give you time to develop it, but keep us in mind. We're always be in the background for you. You keep us in mind going forward as to when you really need to get 75 mil or more.
Yeah, you're not far.
No, we feel from a standpoint of the evolution of the phase 3 and phase 4, what the outcome is going to be for the FDA approval process. The bulk of the capital at that point in time that we are pursuing will be for the global expansion and the manufacturing, because everything else will have been done at the point of the diagnostic being proven, being FDA approved and commercialized.
Yeah. Well, just digesting what you said, for the purposes of taking in capital, you're at 70 something. For the purposes of true market valuation, you're probably already at 100.
Well, it's as the doctor said, he says he's more than likely, given the fact of the nuclear medicine, if you will, design, the imaging adaptation that you're doing with the PET, he says, and the other things, and if you will, the expansion of the diseases with respect to different organs. He says, you're easy past 100 as soon as you begin your phase 3, easily past 100. Now, he didn't put an actual number on it. He just says you'll be in excess of 100 mil.
Yeah, totally makes sense. This has been super helpful. You have, we're just run out of time, but you have a couple wrap up things you'd like to say to the group and then I'll put the screen on so they can contact you. And then,
My parting comments would be that we welcome individuals and family offices that want to share in our vision. We acknowledge the performance and the upside is there, but we want people, excuse me, who believe in us and what we're doing and why we're doing it. I was asked a couple of different times about, the monetary reward that's down the road. And I said this in a very undramatic and a very heartfelt way, that, I can wake up every morning knowing I helped someone. They'll never know me, my name, or the company, but we provided something to the globe, excuse me, that benefits millions upon millions of individuals who are having a more healthier life.
yeah,
I couldn't ask for any more legacy than that.
yeah. Who would want more than that, Damian? Super helpful. Well, nicely done. And thanks for sharing. Since we spoke, the progress is amazing. And I certainly have more clarity around the opportunity. So for the group, if you're at all interested, please feel free to contact Damian, and we'll make sure we give everybody's information to him, and he'll communicate with you directly. And don't hesitate, if there's anybody in your community that would benefit from knowing about this opportunity, please feel free to do that as well. Damian, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Arthur, thank you for the opportunity. And to everyone who has been in attendance, I thank you also for spending the time with us today.
Perfect. And as I always say, thank you for sharing with us the only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time. Until next time.
Very good. Very good, Arthur.
Thank you. Bye, Damian.
Yep. Yes, sir. Take care.